One country locks up more people per capita than any other on Earth. It's not Russia, it's not China, it's a small Central American country of 6 million people that decided in 2022 to build a prison that can hold 40,000 inmates. This is the future of incarceration, and the questions it raises are ones that governments around the world haven't figured out how to answer. We're starting in 2026. Unlike our other race charts, this one doesn't look back. This is about where we're going. What does incarceration look like by 2100? The answer depends on choices we haven't made yet. Choices about punishment versus rehabilitation, about poverty and crime, about whether prisons make societies safer or simply displace the problem. 2026. El Salvador has an incarceration rate of 1,086 prisoners per 100,000 people. Let me put that in perspective. That means roughly 1 in every 92 El Salvadorans is currently in prison. The United States, which has the highest incarceration rate of any wealthy democracy, has 531 per 100,000. El Salvador has more than double that. How did this happen? In 2022, President Nayib Bukele declared a state of emergency in El Salvador in response to a single weekend in which 87 people were killed by MS-13 and Barrio 18, the country's two dominant gangs. The state of emergency suspended constitutional protections. Police could arrest anyone on suspicion of gang affiliation. No warrant needed. Judges were given targets. Prisons were built. By 2024, over 70,000 people had been imprisoned. Some were convicted gang members, some were associates, some were innocent people caught in the sweep. Human rights organizations documented thousands of cases of wrongful imprisonment. But crime rates in El Salvador dropped dramatically. In 2022, El Salvador had one of the highest murder rates in the hemisphere. By 2024, it had one of the lowest. The world noticed. Other governments asked, is this the model? The United States has a different problem. 531 per 100,000. More than 2 million people incarcerated on any given day. More than Russia, more than China, more than any country that calls itself a democracy. The American mass incarceration crisis began in the 1970s and accelerated through the Reagan administration's war on drugs. Mandatory minimum sentences, 3 strikes laws, privatized prisons with financial incentives to keep beds filled. The result is a system that costs over $80 billion per year, fails to rehabilitate the people it incarcerates, and perpetuates cycles of poverty and crime that feed right back into it. The recidivism rate in the United States, the percentage of people who return to prison within 3 years of release, is around 67%. 2/3 of people released from prison end up back inside. The system is not working. Even the people who designed it know it's not working. Japan shows what the alternative looks like. In 2026, Japan imprisons just 30 people per 100,000. Not 30,000, 30 per 100,000. The lowest rate of any major economy. Japan's approach to crime is fundamentally different. First, prevention, youth programs, community support systems, and social safety nets that reduce the conditions that lead to crime. When crimes do occur, Japan prioritizes rehabilitation. Sentences are shorter. Prison conditions are strict but designed around reform, vocational training, education, structured routine. And it works. Japan's recidivism rate is under 10%. Compare that to 67 in the United States. Japan doesn't hide its low crime behind closed borders either. It has cities of tens of millions of people, Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya. Urban density doesn't automatically produce crime. Poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity do. Now we look forward. These projections are scenario-based. No official bodies publish long-range incarceration forecasts. We've modeled based on current trends, stated policy directions, and the research literature on what drives incarceration rates. 2035, El Salvador's rate begins to decline from its peak. The courts cannot process arrests fast enough. International pressure is mounting. Some of those imprisoned are released as the state of emergency moves through cycles of extension and partial rollback. The rate falls from 1,086 toward 800, but it remains the highest in the world. The United States in 2035, still above 500. Reform movements have made progress. Several states have reduced mandatory minimums, legalized cannabis, and expanded diversion programs. But the structural drivers remain: poverty, inequality, a political culture that still rewards appearing tough on crime more than actually reducing it. By 2050, Japan's rate falls further to around 28 per 100,000. The country's aging population means fewer young people in the age groups most associated with crime, and Japan has continued to invest in the social conditions that keep crime low. Brazil tells a different story. One of the most unequal large economies in the world, Brazil has seen its prison population grow steadily for decades. Overcrowding is chronic. Gangs run many prisons from the inside. The state does not have the capacity to rehabilitate. It barely has the capacity to contain. By 2050, Brazil's rate is modeled to have continued climbing, driven by urban inequality and a criminal justice system that catches people without fixing the underlying conditions. The United States by 2100, the projection shows 220 per 100,000. Half of the 2026 peak. Decades of criminal justice reform, driven partly by economics, since mass incarceration is extraordinarily expensive, and partly by changing political consensus, have taken hold. Cannabis is federally legal. Mandatory minimums for nonviolent drug offenses have been abolished. Restorative justice programs have scaled. The recidivism rate is down to 40%, still high by international standards, but dramatically improved. El Salvador in 2100, the trajectory is deeply uncertain. If Bukele's model succeeds long-term, if crime stays low, if the economy improves, if the prison system gradually transitions toward rehabilitation, rates could fall to 400 or below. If the model collapses under its own weight, if wrongfully imprisoned people radicalize inside prison, if organized crime adapts and resurges, the rate could spike again. We've modeled a moderate scenario. The honest answer is that no one knows. What this chart ultimately asks is, what is prison for? Is it punishment, deterrence, incapacitation, rehabilitation?